Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the What's Important Now podcast. I'm Chief Ryan Landrum, coming to you from the Border Patrol Academy here in Artesia, New Mexico. So we talk a lot about the Border Patrol being a small family, a close-knit family. Though many of those families aren't necessarily bound by blood, the experiences that we share together over time, in the field, in training, etc., really drive us together to form family-like bonds. But sometimes we actually do share a family bond with folks that are also Border Patrol agents, civilian staff, other law enforcement organizations within CBP. That's a pretty common theme throughout the Border Patrol. And today, it's no different. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Chief Patrol Agent Ryan Landrum from the Laredo Sector Border Patrol.
Thank you. Good opportunity to be here.
So, as many of you know, the former chief of the Laredo Sector, Matt Hudak, was recently promoted to the deputy chief of the U.S. Border Patrol. He's now in Washington, D.C. And last week, I believe it was, Chief Ortiz named you as his successor, Chief Hudak's successor, as the chief of the Laredo Sector.
Truly an awesome opportunity to get to remain in Laredo, and especially being promoted in Laredo. I'd been there for about a year as the deputy chief of Laredo, so getting to make that movement from deputy to chief is a great opportunity, and truly honored to have that opportunity.
Well, congratulations from behalf of the men and women of the U.S. Border Patrol Academy. Looking forward to the great things that you're going to do down there with the team in Laredo. And just as an editorial note, Carl is my uncle. So going back to the blood relationship that we share, Carl is, if you watched my podcast, largely the reason I'm in the U.S. Border Patrol today. So appreciate that, all the mentorship and guidance over the years, especially as I was an 18-year-old kid trying to get in this organization. I appreciate that.
And contrary to the belief that we're brothers, so we are actually nephew and uncle.
Yeah.
Even though I think most of the patrol thinks we're brothers.
Yeah, I think we've just stopped correcting folks this time.
That's right.
I'd like to take a minute, tell you a little bit about Carl's 25-year career in the U.S. Border Patrol. So it says here you entered on duty at the Brown Field Station in the San Diego sector in October of 1996, about 25 years ago, a little over 25 years ago, as a member of Class 323. As with tradition of every guest, I have to ask you, do you still remember your class chant?
I do remember the class chant. So it was 323, on the line is where we'll be. So
there you go.
I utilize that frequently. We use it during when we EOD new trainees into Laredo Sector. So all the staff there, we challenge the staff there too. So we keep it alive. It doesn't just end at the academy.
Yeah. So I think Chief Owens formerly talked about this a lot. This is one of those things that you literally start on your first days to weeks at the academy, and it is unique to your class and your classmates. It's the only 50 or so of people in the entire world that had this same chant. And for whatever reason, because you say it so often, or just because of the experience, you just never forget it.
Absolutely.
Good deal. So I don't want to venture too far off topic, but I'd like to ask you a question that, for whatever reason, I don't know the answer to. I have no idea how you got in the Border Patrol. You would think I would know. But I probably know most everything else, but I literally do not know the story of how you became to be a Border Patrol agent.
So I'll tell the story quickly, but prior to coming into the Border Patrol, I was a peace officer here in the state of Texas and a canine handler. And Goliad County, the sheriff, was setting up a tactical checkpoint on US 59 coming up from Laredo all the way up to Victoria. But they were doing it in Goliad, right outside of town. And they were doing this as a joint checkpoint with Border Patrol out of Corpus Christi, Texas. I got an invite to go down there because I was a canine handler. For me, it was a good opportunity to run the dog. So I'm like, absolutely, I'll definitely be there. They were doing it. It was one night only, 12 hours, and it was overnight. So got down there. They had called in a bunch of canines from around the area because they were trying to facilitate the flow of traffic. At that time, that was a one-lane road each direction. And so it was just a good opportunity to work overall. But growing up in the family that we grew up in, where everybody's law enforcement, extended family are law enforcement, like cousins and stuff up in Philadelphia, uncles, everybody's, wound pretty tight growing up in that law enforcement environment. And And so that night, that was the first experience for me to really see other ways that law enforcement work can be done. And obviously, I didn't know at the time anything about the Border Patrol and which stations were better than any other station, or all those beliefs, and that urban legend all the way across the board. But the point is that night, all of the agents that were up there from Corpus Christi made such a good impression on me. This was 1994. They made such a good impression on me that literally the next day, even though we had worked all night, I drove home, and before I even went to sleep, I called a recruiter down in McAllen, Texas, and applied. Wow. So that's how I end up in the United States Border Patrol.
So I learned that story just along with you all, and a little ashamed that I didn't know that before, but that's a great story. And if if you were in Corpus Christi, Texas, back in 1994, you potentially contributed to Chief Landrum's tenure as a Border Patrol agent.
They contributed more than they know.
And that, you know what? And honestly, that's honor first.
Yes, sir.
Right? We just
100% organizational excellence.
Organizational excellence, and put forth the best Border Patrol agent you can be every single day, and don't underestimate the impact that you have when you wear this badge, when you wear this uniform on some unsuspecting, local cop who's just running a dog. Now he's a Border Patrol agent chief of the Laredo Sector.
Sure.
It's pretty incredible. Speaking of, obviously, he kind of mentioned it. We're both from Victoria, Texas, a little old town in South Texas. But it says here you spend 5 or 6 months in Charleston, South Carolina, and then you wind up in the booming metropolis of San Diego, California, back in 1995, 1996, if you will, and some stuff going on out there.
It was very busy whenever I EOD'd in the Border Patrol in San Diego. In fact, our at least everybody in Class 323 will recall this. The morning that we EOD'd in San Diego, and we were actually being driven to the training center to go take the oath of office, the Otay Mountain was literally on fire. The entire mountain was on fire, and you could see it burning while we were going in to take the oath of office. So it was interesting coming back and having to work in that environment after the academy.
Charleston at the time, this is 96 through probably 2001-ish, we kind of had, the U.S. Border Patrol was running 2 different academies, one in Charleston, South Carolina, one in Glencoe, Georgia, or Brunswick, Georgia, and it would just kind of flip-flop between classes. One would EOD and go to Charleston, one would EOD and go to Glencoe. That maintained through my tenure in the early 2000s before we transitioned out to the facility that we're at now in Artesia. So over time, as you hear guests talk about Charleston or Glencoe, that's kind of why there's a split. And there's a longer history about the locations of the academies, but that's kind of our modern history story with where we train. So you go out and you become a Border Patrol agent in Brownfield, and then you quickly kind of promote over to the Imperial Beach Station. And for context, the Imperial Beach Station is the furthest western station in the United States. It is actually bordered by the Pacific Ocean. It's a beautiful station as well. I mean, Brownfield is equally beautiful, but that kind of iconic picture of the water coming in and the fence kind of going out into the Pacific Ocean, that's the IB station. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, I mean, as everybody knows, every mile of border is just that mile of border. It's different every place, everywhere. Being at Imperial Beach was interesting. The Brownfield experience was interesting, getting to actually move over to Imperial Beach and seeing it done a little bit differently, a little less mountain, a little more ocean, presented its own challenges across the board. And this was also during a time period when the original, landing mat fence was still up, was starting to be discussed through the national narrative of what would actually be required to secure the border in San Diego. I think apprehensions, if I remember correctly at that time, were about 4,000 a day between San Diego, Chula Vista, and Brownfield, which, for the record, even though at the time those were 4 big stations, they only spanned across 14 miles of international border.
That's a huge point. 3 to 4 stations cover 14 to 15 miles of border, and they're averaging 4,000 apprehensions between the 3 of them. That's intense.
Right. And then, the days it rained, it got a lot worse. Yeah. And I guarantee you on days if we, and I've said this a lot over the course of my career back at that time, if I was a part of bringing 400 people into custody, 400 made it.
Sure.
I mean, there was just that much activity at that time.
It was an assumption.
So, well, you could see them.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was
we
literal.
weren't assuming. You could actually see
Yeah.
people getting away. I mean, it was that's how busy it was. It was interesting. And I got to see that environment, from day one being that busy in a matter of just a few years, getting all of that border barrier in place,
Right.
In San Diego. I actually got to see that go all the way to, sometimes out there we were going 30, 45 days without a single apprehension at the station.
Wow.
So dramatic transition.
So for listeners, we kind of use San Diego as the model for infrastructure, not in a political sense, just in a very apolitical fashion of what potentially a smart barrier system might do for both migrants crossing the border illegally, but also, and Chief Scott, the former chief of the Border Patrol, had a really, really great presentation on the impacts that the community felt, the positive impacts. Mm-hmm. So, your patrol in IB circa 1999, 2000, it's no man's land, right? You go there now, and there's literally the city has crawled into the area maybe in which you used to patrol because we're able to kind of smartly patrol the border and keep the work that we do as close to that international boundary as possible.
Yeah, the control of the border allowed for the growth of multi-billions of dollars of real estate and commerce in that particular area. Right. And it also improved the neighborhood and communities on the south side of the fence in Tijuana, Mexico as well, by eliminating that criminal element from the border environment. Right. So it improved both sides of the border.
That's a fantastic story. And again, you don't have to involve politics and just, smartly patrolling an area and benefiting positively, two countries. So.
Yeah, and I say it a lot, especially speaking externally to people outside the organization that don't really understand it, about, border barrier or, whatever word you want to use, that's something that I've seen requested from 1996 to today. Mm-hmm. We've always wanted that. And we want it in our request because it helps us tactically at that particular mile of border. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't address any kind of policy issue. It doesn't, fix immigration law. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do all of those kind of things. But tactically for the men and women that are out there, risking their lives, day in, day out, it dramatically helps them.
Yeah, I mean that's as chief patrol agents, that especially for you, probably more so than me in that regard, and deploying, having the weight of deploying 1,800 or so Border Patrol agents in the Laredo Sector out to do the job every single night. The weight of their lives is on your shoulder because they're doing a job you asked them to do. So you have to, at a minimum, request all of the tools necessary to ensure that they can do their job efficiently, effectively, as well as safely.
Right, 100%. I mean that's the priority: getting agents on the border and doing it in a way that they can do the job better, faster, easier. Yeah. I mean, I say that all the time. Yeah. So anything that surrounds that, anything that can improve it so that the person that's out there actually completing that border security mission and that national security mission daily, that they can do it better, faster, easier, then we want to pursue all of those capabilities.
Awesome. So this is where you should have to take a bit of an unconventional twist, right? I talk a lot about, having broadening experiences, holding command experiences, et cetera. But this is where, after being a supervisor in IB, you switch over and become a special agent with the Federal Air Marshal Service. Why'd you do that?
So remember the part of the story just a little while ago when I said we went from approximately 4,000 apprehensions a day, down to zero, And the last couple of years that I was in San Diego sector, it was challenging. I mean, it's agents are a victim of their own success. Yeah. You ask agents to shut the border down, they shut the border down, and then what? Kind of thing. Yeah. And so all of 2002, 9/11 had just occurred. Yep. 2002, we were getting really good control of the border. going into 2003, and then the opportunity came, and it was a split-second kind of decision. It was like out of the blue. I'd really forgotten that I had even applied for that job. And, they called out of the blue, and they're like, hey, do you want this job? Here it is. You'll have to be in New York City. You'll have 1 week to get here. And it was instantaneous. Like I had to say yes or no. Wow. This was a kind of a different transition for the on the Air Marshal side. This was a limited window when they actually existed within ICE at that time. So they were leaving FAA and not quite to TSA yet.
Wow. So you go from one coast to the next, apparently, and
Yes.
Stationed in New York City. So it's probably some international flights.
Great opportunity, especially working out of the New York field office. Just unbelievable. You're predominantly working international flights. Plenty of domestic, coast to coast. A lot of other coverage, around the country. But truly a phenomenal opportunity to get to do that. I spent 22 total months over there. I honestly feel like I traveled the world.
Yeah.
And and then I feel like it feels like I never left the Border Patrol. It literally feels like I was a Border Patrol agent. I left, I traveled the world for 22 months, and then I came back to work.
It's an interesting comment, though, but how many of your partners in the Air Marshals are agents?
Oh, there's tons.
Right.
Yeah. The overwhelming majority, I think, of that entire service are Border Patrol.
Yeah. So by extension, it's family again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Chief Owens and I talked about in my podcast as well. Like my class, you come in around that 2000, time frame, and you kind of bleed into post 9/11 environment. And you're still with this organization. Folks start to get better opportunities for maybe different locations to get back home. They have a different sense of calling. And we lost quite a few folks from the rank and file to the Federal Air Marshals, and it sounds like you were a part of that.
Thousands.
And thousands. But for some reason, you couldn't stay away, only for 22 months, and you come back into the U.S. Border Patrol as a supervisory Border Patrol agent, course developer, instructor here at the U.S. Border Patrol Academy in Artesia.
Yeah, for me at the time, that's actually a promotion opportunity.
Okay.
So a lot of people may not know the full history, but at that time, to be a GS-13 supervisory Border Patrol agent in the U.S. Border Patrol, the only place you got a GS-13 was at the Border Patrol Academy. This was before the across-the-board pay adjustments, pay increases, all of that kind of stuff. So when I came back, I saw it, number one, as an opportunity to come back to do what I actually love to do. And, I'm getting promoted out of it. All at the same time. So, that was an easy yes, saying that, and then relocating from New York City back here to Artesia, New Mexico.
How was the application process? Did you have to go back on USA Jobs and apply for a supervisory Border Patrol agent, and then was there some kind of logistical issue to get you back in the ranks?
No. That particular job announcement, actually, in the job announcement itself, it said it was open DHS wide. Oh. So if you were prior, graduate of the academy, and you were a career employee, and you worked anywhere within the Department of Homeland Security at that point, I just went from one pay period there to the pay period here. It was that easy.
So going back to, you kind of mentioned history. I obviously wasn't there when the decision was made, but it sounds to me like the Border Patrol is trying to grow at this time.
Oh, big time.
So they announced this as a DHS-wide opportunity to come rejoin the ranks if you're formerly commissioned as a Border Patrol agent. At the same time, when you get here in 05, 06, we're trying to grow by
at that time in 06 it was actually called Ramp 6000.
Yep.
We were trying to grow the Border Patrol by 6,000 new agents over and above attrition.
Yeah, and we did that in very, very, very short order. You and I both kind of lived that life here at the Border Patrol Academy, and the numbers are staggering of the amount of people that we put through those years. So, how we got anything else done, I'll never know, but it was an intense time here.
Right. I stayed out here for about 2 years, and in that time I was in operations at the time, and leading lead coordinator for these classes, and I had 16 classes in that very short period of time. Yeah. So there's 880 people out there in the Border Patrol that
when you're considering we have 19,000 or so folks in the ranks right now, nearly 1,000 people that you've had the opportunity, just in that small window, is pretty impressive. Operations being, of course, the operations department here at the Border Patrol Academy. And back then, as it was when I was here, we actually also taught law. So we taught Border Patrol operations, how to be a Border Patrol agent, and we also taught the law curriculum, while also having the responsibility to have class oversight, which means we dealt with all the administrative paperwork and logistics that comes with managing classes of 50 or so folks every couple of days as they were coming. I think at one point we were doing like 3 or 4 EODs a week.
Yeah, we were doing EODs every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and graduations every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh yeah, I remember them. So all good things must come to an end. The Border Patrol Academy, you'd had enough of that, and you had the opportunity to go to Border Patrol headquarters. So you're kind of rounding off that. You've been kind of broadened a little bit with the Air Marshals. You spent some time in San Diego. Now you're doing that HQ tour in 2007. What was that like?
It was interesting when I first got up to DC. I spent 4 total years up there. When I first got up there, I went into, at the time, what was Enforcement Information Technologies, so on the tech side of it, and oversaw infrastructure services, which is all of the interaction with OIT at the time, with our network, actually all of the purchasing of computers, everything about that entire process. That took. And then we were just finishing off, the Border Patrol was just finishing off the transition out of the prior INS system, so what was then ICE, over to the CBP system. Right. And so I got to help with finishing that project off too.
Excellent. So it's a great point. We both do a lot of mentoring of up and coming agents, and for those of you listening, I can't say it enough. If you go to headquarters, anybody can be an operator. Anybody can go into ops and do operational stuff and support a sector, and that's really good business to do. But at the same time, there are other opportunities to expand what you're capable of, your capabilities, expand your knowledge base, expand your entire portfolio into other things. So, kind of a perfect example here. You go up and do. In fact, I think you succeeded Chief Hudak at the time.
I did.
Is that right? Yeah, so this is the second time
he was just departing.
That's
and
right.
I was taking over.
So he takes over for Chief Hudak for the first time, coming out of the academy, going into DC. But it doesn't. The whole point here is you don't have to just go be an operator. You can go learn other things, and there is still a path for you to ascend into whatever level of leadership you aspire to. In fact, it could be argued that the broader you are, the better potential leader you are going to be in the future.
Yeah, I would say broadening certainly matters anywhere across the whole entire, leadership spectrum. You have to be able to, reach back to other experiences, leverage other things, other ways of getting, objectives completed. And you learn that from different places, but you also learn that from different types of work that you do throughout your career. And it'll definitely make it easier for you to leverage future problems using past experiences.
Yeah, there was so kind of apropos, there was a statement made by a 2-star general at the Pentagon when I was at the U.S. Army War College, and we were doing a staff ride to D.C., a national security staff ride. And I'll never forget it. The general says, at the strategic level, all of the easy problems have already been solved. That's and your ability to solve them by yourself probably doesn't exist.
That's right.
Right? So speaking of the Army War College, while you're assigned to Border Patrol headquarters in 2007, you also, I think in 2011, go over to the U.S. Army War College as an in-residence student.
It was class of 2010.
Okay.
So headed up there at the end of 2009, graduated halfway through 2010. And it was an opportunity. I consider myself extremely lucky to even get the opportunity to be at the War College. There were 30 civilians, what the military would call civilian, 30 civilians there that year. So I was one of 30 getting the opportunity to go up there. And, it's hard to really capture the impact of that experience in words, especially in short time periods like this. but truly phenomenal, firsthand. But an unbelievable experience that literally nothing could ever change it after that. Like you're never going to forget that 1 year in resident.
Yeah. So Chief Owens and I talked about that as well on the podcast, and obviously he went to a different school within the National Defense University. You and I obviously both attended the U.S. Army War College, and one of my bigger takeaways was just the quality of American that is operating in the national security space, the global security space. Average, Joe American, to include myself prior to the experience, even though I've been a Border Patrol agent, for 18 years at the time or whatever it was, did not understand nor appreciate the caliber of folks doing work on our behalf to keep this country safe.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, that's really the word to capture that.
Yeah, I completely agree. You get done with the War College. You come out with a master's degree in strategic studies, and you go into, this is where you start to first touch the Laredo Sector. This is 2011. You become the patrol agent in charge of the Cotulla Border Patrol Station. Is that right? That's the first?
All that's good. I just want to go back to the War College for just a second.
Absolutely.
Whenever you go to these types of opportunities, we talk about the whole idea of broadening, go to these opportunities, get as much out of these opportunities as you possibly can when you go. So strict, it's a business trip, right? It's not vacation. Right. And so you're going there, you're putting in a lot of work. At the War College offers an opportunity, once you complete the first 2 core classes, they offer, I think it's 3 different opportunities where you can go off and specialize in other programs. And one of those opportunities is the Advanced Strategic Art program at the U.S. Army War College. A lot of people there's 350 students at the War College in total. That year, 42 of them applied for ASAP. So ASAP is the honors course. It means a tremendous amount of more work.
Mm-hmm. It's actually the only thing they promise you is more reading, more writing.
It's not a little more work. It's so much additional work that they actually assign you an office in the library. That's how much more work it is. But I applied for it that year because I figured, the Department of Homeland Security, CBP, and the Border Patrol are sending me here for a year to gather as much knowledge as I can and bring it back to the organization. Right. So trying to maximize that, I applied for ASAP that year. 42 people applied. I was one of 13 that got into the ASAP seminar that year. So I spent the following 9 months with the ASAP seminar finishing out that particular program. Yeah. It was everything they promised. Yep. It was a lot more work. And what was really key about that experience, both for myself and the United States Army, was that I was the first non-military officer ever selected to and complete ASAP in the history of the U.S. Army. So, and they put that quote, it's like right in the transcript. So it was a big deal to the Army too. Yeah,
that's awesome. Obviously it paved the way for guys like me. When I went through the U.S. Army War College, I was able to make it into the ASAP as well. And the cool part about it is it's extremely Socratic, but at the same time they take you out of the classroom and literally put you in the battlefield.
Oh yeah.
Right. So meanwhile you're kind of learning and instructing in this Socratic method. You're doing it from the riverbank in Mississippi, in Vicksburg. Right. Mm-hmm. You're doing it from Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. You're doing it from Omaha Beach. Right. In France.
Gila, Sicily.
You're doing it from Gila, Sicily.
Standing on an ironclad.
That's right. 100%. You're doing it from Point to Hawk.
That's right.
On the actual point. And learning from those Americans that I talked about, and kind of teaching each other, obviously informed by what you mentioned, the extra load of academics that they throw on you. But I'm sure you would agree with this. I would not have had it any other way.
Oh, no.
No. So... Anybody aspiring to go to the U.S. Army War College, obviously we're extremely big proponents of it, but I think Chief Landrum kind of mentioned the biggest takeaway is, you're going to get out of these types of experiences what you put into them. And if you're given the opportunity to do that, it's your responsibility to get literally all you can out of them and take it back and kind of enrich your leadership style and what you bring back to the organization. And we talk about this probably daily. There's things that you and I, you developed in 2011 as a part of the, your cohort, and things that I started to work on in 2017 as a part of my cohort that we use today. Leader engagement, readiness, and modernization came right out of the halls of Root Hall at the U.S. Army War College for me. So going on to Cotulla. In 2011, you become the patrol agent in charge. And in Cotulla, this is, so you're on the heels of this education, you're on the heels of, broadening your mind and your academic background, but you start to, what I would argue, kind of conceptualize and lead an organization that almost starts to change the way we do business in South Texas. Can you tell me generally the intent behind what you kind of coined as Operation 29 Cotulla?
So when I first got down to Cotulla, you're new to a station. Everybody that's gone in, as a PAC or a DPAC into a station, they're trying to get the lay of the land. They're trying to figure out, what's going on there and how they can actually try to bring some impact, to that particular area of responsibility. And one of the things that I noticed, and granted, I'd been in HQ for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I was in the field, went back, was in HQ for 4 years, now back in the field. And one of the things that was hitting me pretty strong was the number of stolen vehicles. Mm-hmm. Like hearing on the radio, just sitting there and it's positive 29, and listening to the agent's voice, and the agent's just calm and professional, and I'm, I hear positive 29. I'm like, do we need to go out and help them? Yeah. Like, let's go, kind of thing. And then start to get to the magnitude of the stolen vehicles operating in that area. So start working with the collateral intel that's there and kind of get this picture. And they're like, oh yeah, they're like, we have all this. And they brought all this data to my office for literally the past few years. And so I'm looking at this data and I'm, kind of shocked, that they have all the data. And I'm like, why is something not being done about this? Right. And they're like, well, we tried, but, people weren't pushing it. Right. So I took it. That later is what you cited there as being Operation 29 Cotulla. Yeah. Worked with SOD, Special Operations Detachment in Laredo Sector. Patrol agent in charge at the time was Alex Lopez, who I knew pretty well. So explained this whole entire problem set and start trying to utilize a lot of the education, the counter network side of everything that we learned in the Army War College, and bring that to true application in the field. Right.
So this is a big deal. So I mean, not to get overly academic on it, but you're coming out at, you're right in the middle of the war. Right. At the Army War College. So the novel solutions that were being developed in 2003 to 2007 or so are now the new textbooks, for lack of a better way of saying it. And you start talking about in the introduction of utilizing intelligence more, utilizing counter network operations, kind of coin operations at the same time. So you take that, that kind of knowledge that you gained over the years previous, and you apply it down into South Texas, and you really start to work on the networks that you can actually have an impact against, that were arms, if you will, or extensions of these transnational criminal networks that maybe have been based in a country where we didn't have as much influence or capability. Now you're applying a capability against them here in the United States.
Right. It was something that it really had always been there. It just had not been addressed in that manner prior to that. Certainly not on any kind of a large scale. And it was looking at the problem set. Yes, we have this problem set down there. Right. And there were some weekends literally we were recovering more than 40 stolen vehicles a weekend. Right. And when you extrapolate that out over several years, and then you look at the bigger picture of that, like us wanting to start targeting that particular asset or the people that are stealing those vehicles, that are contributing to that actual criminal network. It wasn't just a matter of, trying to find the stolen vehicle, return it to its rightful owner. That wasn't really the issue. It was that issue was being utilized to further the border crimes that were being committed. Okay. And if we could address one part of that, then we could slow down the amount of entries in that particular area. If people had nowhere to go, we were taking away the transportation piece, then they would have to come up with a different plan.
Right.
So
that kind of leads into the creation of what was known as the South Texas Campaign, or the STC. Ironically enough, Chief Hudak was also a member of that. He had a division lead in that under former Chief Robert Harris, who was the director of STC. But he also kind of this whole thing that was started in 2011 with the STC. Op 29 Cotulla was kind of the genesis of the first jumping off point to, hey, we can actually really do some counter network operations. This eventually leads into the Joint Task Force West, which was an initiative by then Secretary Jay Johnson, and kind of built out where Director Harris becomes the director, and you serve as the first Chief of Staff for that. And you have a pretty cool story of how that whole went down. So if you don't mind laying that out for us.
With that story, really, we talk about being flexible and being resilient quite a bit throughout the organization. And we talk about resiliency a lot. This was real world application of that. Yeah. So, post Cotulla, I had gone over to Laredo North, become patrol agent in charge there. And then after that, after a couple years over there, I went to Laredo Sector and became a division chief at Laredo Sector. Yeah. And I was sitting there in my office one day as division chief, and, coming down the hall came in Chief Harris, at the time, and he comes walking through, I'll never forget it. He comes walking around the corner of my door, and he just looks over at me and he's like, "Hey, Landrum." He's like, "Whatever all that stuff is on your desk," he goes, "get rid of all that stuff." Right? He goes, "Effective tomorrow, you're now the Chief of Staff of Joint Task Force West." And I remember looking up and just asking him, "Sir, what's Joint Task Force West?" So within about 36 hours, literally, we flew up to D.C. We were sitting in Secretary Jay Johnson's office, and we were getting the full readout with the other components, components from HSI and from Coast Guard, of exactly what the Secretary's expectation was with us, and the extremely compressed timeline we had to stand that up and be successful at it.
Right. Side note, I think everybody that ever had the pleasure coming across paths with former Chief Harris has a Chief Harris story kind of rhymes similar to that.
If you know Chief Harris, you can picture the story.
No, if you know him, you've probably been in those shoes, and equally you've probably been in your shoes. Or like, 10-4 Chief, by the way, what's that? Let's do that. What is it?
We're gonna be successful.
That's right. And so you do this Joint Task Force West. You stand it up, essentially build it from literally nothing into what it kind of matured into over time. It has since been disbanded, but at the same time, it was one of the stories here is just because you're in Cotulla, Texas. For context, Cotulla, Texas is a station in the Laredo sector. It's north of the border. It's kind of like Freer or Hebronville. It is not on the line. So a lot of times, state people who work at these outstations, they feel like they don't get the same attention as maybe the Laredo South or the Laredo North that has the biggest checkpoint in the country. But understand that just because you may not think you're doing a ton of work to provide this nation security, understand that with one operation it can be built off into a whole organization that didn't exist previously in the entire Department of Homeland Security. Right. After you get done building JTF West with Chief Harris and others, you promote to the Deputy Chief Patrol Agent in Yuma Sector. So now we're kind of illustrating again these varied experiences. You go from San Diego to New York to the Academy to DC, South Texas. Now we're touching back on the West Coast, if you will, in Yuma Sector, and you do the Deputy Chief in Yuma for about 5 years. Within that 5 years, though, you go to the Department of Homeland Security Senior Executive Service Candidate Development Program, or the DHS SCS CDP. You've heard Chief Owens talk about it. He was a graduate of that. I was a graduate of that. Formerly before me, Carl was a graduate of that as well. But we talk also within the confines of the SES CDP, you have to go and do a developmental assignment. It's meant to both stretch you personally and professionally, but really kind of introduce you and test your bona fides to becoming a senior executive. So it's almost like a general officer, a flag officer in the military. We don't need you necessarily to be perfect at being a Border Patrol agent. We need you to be a perfect generalist. You have got to be, wide and deep on multiple subjects, not just Cotulla Station, right, for example. So talk to me a little bit about your developmental assignment. I think it's a pretty cool story.
So with that assignment, I think it's interesting to talk about how I got to the assignment. So the very, very first day, once everybody from around the country, whenever you're in a CDP, and again, great program, anybody that's interested in SES, anywhere in the federal government, find either that same CDP, Candidate Development Program, or any other CDP that you would be eligible to attend, and try to get into those experiences. They're going to help you, and they're going to make that process, that transition from a general schedule employee to an SES much easier, easier process. But so we get up there, and it's the very first trip to DC for that particular cohort. It's before they break you up into the 3 littler cohorts. So it's about 50 people altogether, all the students for that year. And standing there, and the folks from DHS come in the room, and they talk about all the great things that you're going to do, because you have 8 months of academics at the American University before the developmental assignment. And so they talk about all of that, and then they say you're going to go to a developmental assignment, a stretch assignment, and the only requirement is that assignment will be a vacant SES position, or equivalent. And the only requirement was that you cannot do it in your home agency. Yeah. So for me, that meant CBP was off limits. Yeah. I had to find something somewhere else. And then they threw in, this comment at the end, and they're like, and you can do that in any other agency in the federal government, or you can do that in the private sector. And I was dumbfounded. I've never heard of anybody going to the private sector. Right. I'm sure there's other experiences out there, but I had never heard of it. So I immediately raised my hand and I asked the question, and I'm like, how, serious are you all about you can do it in the private sector? And they're like, well, you can, but there's this other easier route. You can do it this way. If you choose to do the private sector, you have to find the company, and then you have to do the whole process. Legal, ethics, getting it through, resource boards, getting it approved, on and on. You have to do the whole process, and you'll have to do all of that on your own. Yeah. Or you can just identify a vacant SES and just go there. Yeah. So, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, we have 8 months of school, right? Like, how hard can this be? And I remember going back to the hotel that night and sitting there thinking, like, how would I do this? Like, I want to do it. It's kind of an interesting way of broadening, right. And but where do you even start? Yeah. Right? So I remember the first day or two, I put together a series of different companies in the private sector that at least I found interesting and thought I would be able to learn some stuff there and bring it back to the organization. And so I narrowed that list down to 10 companies. And then came the getting into the companies, and how do you do that? Again, nobody's helping you. It's just you, but I have 8 months, right? So I can figure this out. And I tried everything. Everything under the sun. I tried snail mail, email, corporate chat rooms. I tried going through and finding email addresses of C-suite members in these organizations. Right. And then, let's just say you get lucky and you actually, I didn't realize how much I bit off at the time. Yeah. I really didn't.
I'm learning that.
But let's just say you get lucky and you actually make it to the right decision maker, right? Because it's only somebody from a C-suite that's going to bring you on as an SES equivalent, right. And then to tell the story that, I'm with the federal government and I'm here to help.
It's going over like a lead balloon.
Yes. And nobody wants to invite the federal government to come in for free into their C-suite, and expose their entire company. They have no idea what's happening and how this program's working.
Right.
All that being said, though, I was fortunate enough to get responses, and it took 3 months of work. But I was fortunate enough to start getting responses from 5 of the companies, right? And I'll never forget. 5 companies were Google, Google X, Dropbox, Koch Industries, Koch Brothers, and McChrystal Group. So General Stanley McChrystal retired from United States Army, has his own consulting firm in Alexandria, Virginia. And so those were the companies that started, interacting with me. And the guys I was talking to from McChrystal Group, which at the time were like Ryan Fall, Chris Fussell, some of those guys, they were trying to figure out exactly what it is that I was asking for also. They did ask for a face-to-face meeting, so I went up and, that's the interview. I didn't know. I thought it was just a regular meeting, but that's the interview process. And then, General McChrystal was like, absolutely. At the time, they had 2 different lines of business. They were bringing on a 3rd line of business, which was the McChrystal Group Leadership Institute, today known as McChrystal Academy. And, General McChrystal asked me, if I would be interested to come up there, be the chief of staff, and help him start building that project, and leveraging. I was able to leverage a lot of experiences in the stand-up, with the SDC and JTFW, and this is another new organization and building it. So there was one truly valuable thing, though, that I learned getting to do that opportunity in the private sector. And it seems kind of simple, but for me, it's probably one of the most valuable things that I learned as a government employee. And that's truly the value of the dollar.
The value of the dollar. That is super interesting. I don't think that Border Patrol agents necessarily, you described it perfectly, right? We understand that we consume a lot of stuff. We get a lot of stuff. We don't know necessarily how we get that stuff. So how does, going out and doing a stretch assignment or a DA in a place like McChrystal Group, where you have to learn the value of a dollar, help you lead the men and women of the Laredo sector today?
So I had the developmental assignment experience, right? That was in 2017. So I learned from that. I was able to take that back, utilize that as deputy in Yuma, utilize it over the past year as deputy in Laredo, and will continue as chief in Laredo, never forgetting that particular part of it. So generally across the board, with most government employees across the board, right, we're good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. We understand that it's a lot of money that the taxpayer gives us, and we try to spend it on prudent things. We try to do all of that. But we don't really understand the constraints or limitations of it. So when I'm talking about the value of the dollar, right, that was something, and at the time in the developmental experience, in the developmental assignment, it didn't weigh on me then. I was under intense pressure to be successful in that thing, and that's really what I was thinking about. Post that, once I got back into my regular government job, and budgeting comes up, or, money and those types of things, I find that I'm now thinking about this a little bit differently. Right? I'm a little more concerned about how much money. Is it enough for this project? Are we utilizing it appropriately? Will the project have the right return on investment? Are we looking at, the correct performance indicators to actually get that money, and utilize that money the right way? So it's a whole other echelon of thinking about money. And it's challenging because in that developmental assignment, there was no more money. I couldn't go get it from the next program manager who had something left over, or go back to Congress. There was no going back to the C-suite at McChrystal Group. They made it clear that the budget was the budget. And so it was challenging and definitely weighs on me, and something I've never forgot that, the value of the dollar.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, kind of the frame here, of all the easy problems have already been solved. It kind of helps frame your leadership of the Laredo sector, because, inevitably as a chief, everybody's got this project they want funded, and because it's going to be the next greatest thing to border security, or the next greatest thing to resiliency, or the next greatest thing to situation X. But now that you're thinking differently, more corporately, and always responsibly about how we spend the dollars that we are given, really kind of puts you in some situations where you got to make hard decisions. There's a back end piece of communicating to the people why we're doing what we're doing. If it doesn't fall in, say, a bucket of leader engagement, readiness, or modernization, it's not worth our dollars today. Potentially that kind of thing.
Right. And I'm able to actually draw upon that DA experience when I speak to the agents about why things aren't, how they think they should be. Right.
Which is a part of your responsibility as a leader.
Right.
We've all experienced leaders in the past like, no, I said no, that's why, we're going to do it the way I said. That's it. No explanation. Well, that's not developing the future of the organization either. Right. So you're taking the time to both be responsible with the dollars that you have because you understand them, but at the same time, taking the time to develop the staff. That's exactly what you should be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because in the government, we get budgets. We get big budgets. Right. And whenever I need something, when I need to stand up a JTFW, I got people I can go to and they can move money around. Right. Or we can go get more money, or we can go back to the appropriators and ask for more money. There's a lot of ways, of getting money in the federal government. Mm-hmm. But in the private sector, I was given a budget and asked to complete this entire project, stand up this new line of business, make it profitable for the company, and that included the hiring of the staff for that line of business as well. Right. And you couldn't go back and get more money. That was it. I mean, you had to make it work on the budget that was actually given, which really, that part weighed heavily for me. Yeah. As somebody who had been in the federal government, my entire adult career. Right. And now had to actually produce money in order to make money.
Yeah, right.
So.
Excellent. So again, you, now you've been brought in, you've hit the education, you've got the command, in Yuma, and you had the kind of HQ experience. So you're kind of fully well-rounded as a Border Patrol agent at this point. You get the next call, and that's to be the promotion you were after, which was the Senior Executive Service position of Deputy Chief Patrol Agent in the Laredo Sector. That's in 2020. That was the next step.
That was the next step. It was a huge opportunity for me. It was an opportunity to come back to Laredo, the place that I had left 5 years earlier. I love it there, so it was a no-brainer. When the call came, and that was the location on the table. Absolutely, and I've loved every minute of it. So
great. And we fast forward to obviously what we talked about last week. You get the call, actually probably in person from Chief Ortiz, and he offers you this position of Chief Patrol Agent. So now you have full command behind Deputy Hudak. Now you have full command of Laredo Sector. So very apropos with the intent of the podcast today and the What's Important Now podcast. Maybe take some time and tell me your 2, maybe 3 top What's Important Now issues for you as the Chief Patrol Agent of the Laredo Sector.
So I would say 3 things, and obviously it's 2022 right now. We are fully aware of the climate that Border Patrol agents are working in out there, and the stresses, truly stressing their resiliency every single day. Yeah. Agents are doing today stuff that traditionally we did not train them to do. Yeah. We're spending in Laredo, I can't speak for all the other sectors. I think they're similar on the southwest border. Mm-hmm. But in Laredo, we're spending about 60% of our available manpower, literally every shift, 24/7. It never stops. About 60% of that in either processing or care and custody. Yeah. So there's tremendous impact to the agents, mm-hmm. On that particular activity going on, and it's not lost on me, especially as the new chief, of that. So what's important now, I think, in this environment right now, literally is getting our agents back to the border. Yeah. right? They came in to perform border security and thereby national security. They wanted to contribute to securing the communities in which they work, those regional areas, thereby the United States. You can carry that out hemispherically and globally as well. The job they're doing today is not necessarily what they signed up for, but they are professionals. In fact, I would call them consummate professionals, and they are getting the job done. They are meeting the expectation, and they are ensuring that people, that human beings that are being caught up in this process and being exploited by these transnational criminal organizations in this process, they are ensuring that these human beings are being taken care of, to the fullest extent of their ability. And to the tune, you saw the numbers last year, so I don't think I even need to quote them.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we've got to get Border Patrol agents out doing Border Patrol agent work, and we need to organizationally find a way to get processing and care and custody done with appropriate personnel for that. Yeah. Not actually using a GS-12 Border Patrol agent for that particular activity. Okay. Second thing, so that's the first thing, number one right there, get agents back to the field. Second thing for me is going to be actually trying to improve our ability to have operational advantage or mission advantage, whichever way you want to look at that. There's a lot of ways to do that, even in the stressed environment that we're in today. You can leverage technology. Different ways. I said this early on in this particular broadcast, make things better, faster, easier for the agents. Yeah. So anywhere that I can utilize technology, that I can bring technology into the space that improves the situation that the agents are actually experiencing on a daily basis, makes it easier for them to do their border security job and national security mission that they're out there doing every day. I want to leverage all those technologies. So, and I think that's evident throughout Laredo Sector. They're very clear on it. Chief Hudak was a great supporter, early adopter of innovative change, right? And I've definitely just picked up that mantle, and we're going to keep, leveraging as much technology in all directions that we possibly can to help the agents that are doing this work every single day. Great. And then from the third thing, for me, of what's important now as a new chief in the Border Patrol, and realizing the amount of influence that you actually have. I also would very much work on trying to influence, national narrative, national policy, because national policy is really what changes everything and makes it better or worse for the agents in the field. And, as chief, I have an obligation to go out and make those arguments on behalf of all the men and women of Laredo Sector and the U.S. Border Patrol, and participate in creating the national narrative and guiding that national policy, and making this entire environment better for all of those agents, but also better for all of the people that live in the United States. That's what they're hiring us to do. They hired us to go out there and secure the border and contribute to national security. And we owe that to all the taxpayers, and we owe that to every single, agent that's out there and professional staff member that's working in this organization to make that job better, easier, faster for them.
Excellent. So to recap that, I hear boots back to the border. I hear achieve mission advantage by any means necessary. And then tell the story of national security through the lens of a Border Patrol agent.
That's right.
Excellent. All right. So as we conclude this, our time together, it is custom that everybody knows we have our mantra of honor first, and honor first means something different to everybody. So I'll ask you, as we depart our time together, what does honor first mean to Carl Landrum, Chief of Laredo Sector?
So, it's always hard. It's always the why, right? It's the hardest thing. We can always say the what we do and how we do it, but it's always hard for somebody to say why we do it. Yeah. And when you look at Honor First, you have to, in my opinion, you have to look at complete organizational excellence. All right. So one of our 3 tiers right now, actually going out and pursuing organizational excellence in every way imaginable. All right. Even walking into this room today, I'm not sure how much the audience is going to be able to see, but you can see branding on both walls. I can see branding in the lights, above us. Right. All of that goes to organizational excellence. It's a constant reminder, both on and off duty. It's a way of life. It's no matter what you do as a Border Patrol agent, on duty or off, right? It's, are you contributing to that particular community? Is whatever you're doing today, is it okay that it's on the front page of the paper tomorrow? And it should be. And everybody should be proud of what they're doing out there. They do immense work, on a daily basis, every single day, for the most part, off duty, right? Same thing. Everybody does what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. Everybody never forgets that they are a federal agent in the United States government, and, Honor First isn't 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's 24/7 for the rest of your career, until the day you choose to retire, resign, or transfer somewhere else.
Excellent. All right. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. And Chief Carl, I kind of started off this podcast by saying, the experiences that we share over time in this organization bring us together and bond us as a family member, as if we were blood. And then sometimes we are indeed bound by blood to that family member that we create with these experiences. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I had the opportunity to have both in you, and I appreciate it. And good luck in your command at the Laredo Sector.
Thank you. Appreciate it.